it wasn't all evil sociopaths who made the Holocaust happen. It was good, normal people who ratted on their neighbors.
Right.
Because they had lost all sense of what truth was. That is the thing that scares me a good deal about what has happened across the political spectrum over the course of the last 20 years is the truth is not the truth anymore. The truth is relative. It's flexible, it's bendable, and when you lose that, you lose all mooring for society and life.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a special guest today for the second time, Kevin Lavelle from a number of companies. Mizzen+Main might be the one you know the best, and then Harbor is the one that you'll find out about today. How's it going?
It's great. It's a great time to be alive.
Yeah. Where do you live?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, nice. That's not bad.
Dallas is a good spot.
Yeah.
Texas is a place to be.
Yeah, I mean, if they would handle the property taxes, I wouldn't have much of a beef here.
I think we're heading in the right direction.
We'll see.
I think it's getting better.
We'll see. One of our buddies, Brian Harrison, is trying to
lead the charge
on that. And then Braxton McCoy is another guy in the legislature that's trying, but it's tough. I mean, trying to get government to give you money back is, good luck. There was a saying in the Army back in the day, like, if you get overpaid, don't spend it, because if the Army owes you money, good luck. But if you owe them money, they'll take it immediately.
Right back out of you.
Yeah.
My gripe on property taxes is my experience in, property values in Dallas continue to rise, which is great. That's good. But you cannot fight. I know there's all these companies that protest the tax bill. There's enough people that don't fight it. So when I went through the process of trying to protest my tax bill, and they said, well, look at all these other properties that went up and didn't protest. I'm like, they're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And so they use the people that don't fight it as a justification to raise yours. And it's my city services have not improved at the rate of my property tax increases, even with the caps. So I'm hoping for some change. I think it's something that's getting enough attention of the legislators and the governor's office that I'm optimistic that things will get better.
Yeah, we'll see. Florida's getting ready to get rid of theirs, but I'm not moving to Florida because I don't like meth. You know what I mean? So
there's trade-offs.
Yeah,
there's trade-offs everywhere.
Alligators and meth are not my thing. So, so tell me, before we get into the other stuff, tell me about what made you decide to start Mizzen+Main back in the day, because it's we've worked with you before. Yeah. You've been on the shows before, and they're the only dress shirts I wear, to be honest, because it's like it's minimal effort and they look nice.
Yeah, look great.
Yeah, I took like 8 of them to the inauguration back in January because I'm clumsy for one, but so I brought like I think 4 white shirts for 2 events, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
Yeah. It's like overpacking underwear or something. But tell me what made you decide to start it.
So I did a political internship in college, which taught me I never wanted to work in politics, stay as far away from that as possible. But I watched a congressional staffer run into a building soaked in sweat. And I grew up playing golf, watched performance polos take over in the golf course, and thought, why has no one ever made a dress shirt out of this type of fabric?
Yeah.
Because if it can take over on the golf course, which is pretty stodgy, very traditional environment, why not a dress shirt?
I mean, it's just made it to some other places too, like farm wear. My buddy AG Gear he's the guy that owned Took, that like swim and fishing wear company.
Yep.
And it's like, he's a farmer himself. He's like, shit, nobody's doing this for farmers.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of the same story. You just like brought it into the I guess the workspace.
Into the workspace. Yeah. And inertia stops a lot of good ideas from happening. And I certainly thought if it was such a good idea, someone would have done it, which prevented me for a little while. And then I was a management consultant and an investment analyst and just thought, you know what, I have to give this idea a shot. And I was in my early 20s. Entrepreneurship felt like it was starting to kind of boom. And so I figured, give it a shot. And if I fail, I'll probably be a more valuable employee from everything I learned if I need to go back into call it regular workforce. So tinkered around for a long time, found some fabrics, dabbled, got a shirt made, and we officially launched in July of 2012. I assumed that when we launched, we would sell out of our first run of 1,000 shirts in a couple weeks because I invented a performance fabric dress shirt. And as it turns out, if you build it, they will come is not true about almost anything. I had to actually go build a brand and build distribution and get following. And Started 2012. We've done hundreds of millions of dollars in sales since we started the company. It's gone very well. It's been huge number of challenges. But we got to do some really cool things along the way. Got to work with a bunch of really awesome pro athletes. We did deals with J.J. Watt and Phil Mickelson, smaller deals with Tebow, Kyle Schwarber, Jake Arrieta, John Isner. And it's been really fun to see. At the same time, I chuckle because every menswear brand has copied us in whole or in part. It's both flattering and a little bit annoying because all the experts kind of laughed us out of the trade shows when we started. And that's how it works.
It kind of happened with Lululemon too. Like all these, it's funny. Like they just kind of like Lululemon was smart to copyright Lycra specifically, right? Or trademark Lycra. Nobody else can use that, so they have to do a little spin off of it or pay them a royalty, one of the two.
Yep.
But Alo and all these other companies that are doing it now, something similar, are. They're making money, but they'll never grow to Lulu. That's kind of a, like, if you're trying to start a business and be unique in the marketplace, that's the difference between having a successful company and an exit sale company, in my opinion, right? Because you're not going to exit sale rip off unless it's to the company you ripped off. Sometimes they'll gobble you up.
Maybe,
just to keep you out of the marketplace, but that's usually the only time that's going to work. So I like the stuff that's a little bit more
I've
unique,
been amazed at what Lululemon has been able to do, and they've had staying power. I feel like they sort of dipped for a couple years, but now they're back again. And I'm still very connected to Mizzen+Main, although not day to day. And so I follow a bunch of people who talk about apparel, and again and again and again, I hear and see the lines at the cash registers at Lululemon stores.
It's crazy.
Always.
They're the only ones that have like a serpentine line set up,
and it's
every
always
store.
Full. I think the most successful, I'm not going to call it a copycat because it's not that, but the most successful fast follow in the space has been Vuori. I think.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Vuori because they went with a completely different style of material that's more comfortable, I guess, right? Like it's super soft.
Yes.
So they went a different direction, but BYLT,
it's more of the relaxed yoga than the compression yoga.
Yeah.
And you can't acknowledge Vuori's growth without acknowledging what happened during COVID, because they had a good following and then they blew up.
Yeah.
Because it was the relaxed yoga apparel and everyone was on Zoom and everyone was just wearing sweats all the time, and it was sweats that didn't look like sweats. I don't know that Vuori will supplant Lululemon.
No, it's a compliment.
It's a compliment, yeah. I think that's the right way to talk about it. Their founder's a super nice guy. I met Joe a couple years ago. Very impressed by what they've done. Admire what they've done. And clothing is tough. It's a super tough business. There's really very little kind of lanes that you can own unequivocally, and so you've got to keep innovating. You got to keep your customers happy.
Yeah, I like what Vuori did though. Like Alo and BYLT are both basically just follow-on brands, right?
Absolutely.
Which is fine. Like you, maybe because the cuts will be different and different. Men don't really have to deal with that too much, except for with shirts. But the cuts are always different for women.
Oh yeah.
We're always about the same shape. You know what I mean? Like the big problem for dudes is will be things like waist to shoulder ratio or like waist and neck ratio, something like that. Because my shoulders and neck are XL and my waist is large, right? Yeah. So I'm like, fuck. I have to get, before Mizzen+Main, I had to get every single dress shirt I ever bought tailored, like literally every one.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why I think we took off in the world of pro athletes. Because the shirt stretches, for a lot of the guys, it fit them better than their custom stuff.
Yeah.
Because in the season and before season, the preseason, during, and after season, they change.
Yeah, it's
body
like a 20-pound.
It's a huge swing, and with this, because it stretches, it actually moves with a lot of those guys, and certainly how much they travel. I was blown away by the adoption rate in the world of pro athletes, and it's one of the reasons we were able to end up being so successful.
Yeah. How was growing the company? You said you started in 2012. We have Hard AF Seltzer, right? And we're the best in the space in 8%. And actually, we don't have any real competitors. White Claw Surge was around for a while. It might still be, but nobody uses it. Yeah. And Bud Light Platinum had the misfortune of being named Bud Light, so their sales have gone completely nowhere.
Still floundering.
Also, those two products suck, and ours is really good, right? Because they were just like, I guess, appendations to a bigger brand. Yeah. They weren't like, it's not a serious operation.
But they're off to the side. They're not getting the love.
Yeah. So, and they've tried to make pushes with him, but like Bud reached out to Post Malone about doing. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. He never buckled on Bud Light. He didn't care about all the politics stuff.
Right.
But he's like, I'm not doing that. He's like, that drink sucks. I'm not doing that. So, but for us, a big problem, aside from, you mentioned COVID, just supply chain stuff, you got to keep an eye on that all the time because, when you're grocery shopping, you're thinking about maybe the next week. But when you're shopping for logistics, you're talking about 6 to 18 months out at a minimum, usually, right?
Yep.
And I don't know how variable the costs are for clothing materials and stuff like that, right? Some of that gets affected by tariff stuff. Some of it gets affected by seasonality, and especially with the Chinese New Year, if you're getting stuff, not just from China, by the way, from South Vietnam or Indonesia, anywhere around there.
Chinese products are in every supply chain, in almost every supply chain in the world.
It gets, after Chinese New Year, usually only about 60% of the workers show back up.
Right.
So you're like, fuck, man. So if you don't get all your shit in by January, you're fucked for quarter two.
Yep.
There's all this stuff. And then another big thing for us is raising capital, because you just can't grow without it. You can't grow without some kind of outside capital, but we've tried to be, we haven't taken any yet, but we try to be pretty careful about the people we talk to about it and what their involvement is going to be.
Absolutely.
So how did you guys approach that?
With Mizzen+Main on the capital side, I self-funded for the first, I don't know what it was, 6 to 9 months.
We self-funded for the first 2.5 years.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it sucked.
It's very hard.
The company technically owes us a shitload of money right now, but we'll get there. Anyways.
You'll get there, and that's the blessing and curse of being a founder, is it's all on you until you can hit some measure of escape velocity. And then I raised about $250,000 from sort of friends and family. I think we did that on a convertible note. I honestly can't even remember now. And then about a year later, we raised about $1 million. And that was the first time that we had some folks that I didn't know come join the cap table. And then about a year and a half later, we raised about $3 million. And raising that much money from angels is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
I do not recommend it.
All the paperwork.
And you're taking 10 to 20 meetings for 1 to 3 checks for between $5,000 and $50,000 each.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
And so, that was my first journey. It's been different the second time around. And typically, the people writing you the $5,000 to $20,000 checks have the most questions and the most opinions. And so, that is another way I love to say to describe brain damage is raising that much money from angel investors. But I didn't have another choice.
Yeah.
Now, we never raised enough money to lose the amount of money that I have seen some of these companies lose. I don't mean to.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I don't want to besmirch anyone, but Outdoor Voices, we're sitting here recording in Austin, and we're big famous Austin brand. I remember hearing, and I don't know if this is true, but this is what I recall hearing. One of the years they did $40 million in revenue and lost something like $22 million. And that's not a business.
That's what BuzzFeed's been doing since 2010, but
it's also not a business.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they didn't have a product that people loved,
right.
but something is fundamentally wrong with that level of spending at that big of a business. First year or two, you're not probably going to make much money, but when you're at that level, something is wrong with the cost structure of the business. And so we weren't profitable for the first many years, but we never lost more than a little bit of money on an annual basis because we never raised enough money to just throw it away in hopes of fanciful growth. Now we were growing, 1, 2, 3, 400% a year, depending on the year, but we were never losing more than, 10% on an EBITDA basis. And that for me was like, we're growing significantly, but we're being judicious to not just be throwing money out the window. Eventually in 2017, El Catterton came in and put in a growth investment. Catterton's one of the I think they're the largest consumer retail private equity firm. And they put in a growth investment to help us get to that next major level. And that for us was when I feel like we finally grew up as a business, right? We were able to get real debt from a real lender to finance our inventory. We kind of took the next major phase in the business.
Did you do like PO loans or something, or what was it? Or was it
prior to Catterton coming in and us getting real debt? I had a very substantial line of credit from a traditional bank that was very expensive with a personal guarantee.
Yeah, we've done that a couple times.
That it's already hard enough to sleep at night as a founder with everything over your head.
Yeah, but when it's your mortgage that's attached to your business, that's
I do remember, and this is getting real here. I remember signing with the bank, and Aaron Graft at Triumph Bank he did a lot right in helping us get to that next phase. When I signed the personal guarantee with them, I said, look, I've had to turn over, like I'd had bend over and cough for the financial analysis you had to do on me. You know that I don't have any money. So like, what am I signing a personal guarantee on? Like you can't, there's nothing for you to take. Yeah. Because in Texas, you're not allowed to take someone's home, but
I mean, you can, for a hard money loan, you can opt to put your mortgage in, but if they just give you the line of credit, then there's nothing they can do about your personal assets. Yeah.
But
well, that's not true. Just the home. There's some stuff.
I had a little bit of equity in our home because we were still super young and early, but otherwise I really had no assets because I'd put everything into the business. And he kind of smiled and he goes, look, it's saying that you will do everything that you can to get all of the money back to us. And I looked at him and I said, that's just doing the right thing. Like if you've loaned me money, obviously I should help you get it back. And he said, I know, but you still have to sign this document. And so when we got out from under that personal guarantee, that was a huge relief for me. It wasn't like every minute of every day I sat and thought about it, but there are those nights when you wake up at 2 a.m. and all of the sudden, and I don't know why my brain would do this to me, be like, what if it fails? And oh, by the way, you're on the hook for an enormous amount of money.
Well, the reason your brain does that is the same reason your brain tells you that it's cold or that you're hungry or that there's danger.
To cause action.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's just biomechanics at work. Something you mentioned a minute ago about not having a bunch of money to throw around and shit like that. Well, it's kind of a trope now, but so many startups fail because they're able to spend their way out of lessons they should have learned, right? Like there's something about staying lean when you're early in the game that it's two things happen. One is you get hit more, right? You fail more and you're like, oh shit, and you correct it. But the failure is small because you didn't have a huge investment into it. And look, it's growing a company over that amount of time sucks because you come out of pocket for a lot of stuff that, hopefully you'll recoup at some point, a lot of sweat equity as well. But it's better than ending like a lot of these companies, which is like having to file bankruptcy, $20 million in debt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
that
brutal.
happens a lot.
It happens a lot. It's absolutely brutal. And, it's there's this very unfortunate, pernicious set of ideas in the United States that, business owners are just rolling in it. Very few of them ever do. And one of the most important, hopefully, tide shifts that can unfold in this country is helping people understand that business owners create opportunity and they direct capital to more productive uses that enable people to work and feed their families and buy houses and buy things and grow our economy. And, I'm sure I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but if you look, I think it was around 2000-ish, and in the United States and the Eurozone, if you look at the GDP per capita, whatever it is, basically around the year 2000, we were roughly competitive with the Eurozone. And over the last 20, 25 years, the Eurozone has not meaningfully grown, and the United States has grown significantly. Yeah. And that rising tide lifts all boats gets a lot of flack from people who don't like growth and the
they associate it with trickle down economics, which is not the same thing, right?
Absolutely.
It's not the same.
Absolutely.
Trickle down economics is nonsense.
Yes.
But a rising tide certainly lifts all boats. I mean, you could
look at what's happened in this country.
Yeah, you can track that pretty easily. Yeah. Just I think the best recent example is AOC kicking the Amazon Center out of Brooklyn, right?
I haven't even heard of this.
Okay, so it was like 21 maybe.
Okay.
22. I don't remember exactly what year it was. But Amazon was bidding for a corporate headquarters in Brooklyn, in her district. and which is funny. She calls herself a Brooklyn girl. She's from like an hour north of there in a fucking rich suburb. But anyways, yeah, she launched this huge campaign to get them the fuck out of there, right? And it would have been Amazon was going to get a $3 billion tax break, but create $30 billion in revenue. And she was like, you're stealing $3 billion from the city. That $3 billion doesn't exist unless they're there.
I see what
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's fucking retarded. And which is no, like, of course she's said that because she's a retarded person. But I think it was something like $130,000 a year jobs that would have been added to that district.
Yeah.
Which is like, if you think about that, especially from like a progressive standpoint, the tax base just grew exponentially. People are going to move back into the area and stuff, but she shut that shit down because, you know, communists don't love the poor. They hate the rich. That's really all it is.
You know, my experience and my belief on corporate tax breaks is, you know, if there is a relief over time for demonstrable value created and all businesses can participate in the same upside, that is a way that the world works. And to pretend that it doesn't it's just not, it's fanciful. Like municipalities and states are always going to find ways to try and attract jobs. At the same time, you know, I'm a startup in Dallas and I get no tax breaks. I have no lobbyists that are going to help me as a startup try and create more jobs. And as startups absolutely create jobs. So I have this weird push and pull, especially for large corporates that use their lobbying power to bully around, you know, special favors for themselves. At the same time, it wasn't about the special favors. In that case, it is certainly about an anti-corporate belief system where we don't like companies, we don't like businesses. So it's I would love to be able to access some of those tax breaks, but I don't have the lobbyists that enable those types of things.
Well, one of the other things that happens as a result of this just rampant stupidity and a lack of economic understanding is that I guess almost analogous to trickle-down economics is the stupid shit that's targeting big businesses almost always hurts small businesses the most, right? Like
absolutely. We're the ones that can't keep up.
Yeah. So the original version of Trump's economic plan included quote-unquote loophole, carried interest loophole closing. Carried interest allows small business owners to keep money untaxed and spend it right back into their own business, which creates jobs. There's no question about that. Like we've done it. We've been taking advantage of carried interest loophole at Hard AF, putting literally all the money. We haven't taken a dime from that company, putting all the money back, and we've hired like 20 people in the last year. You know what I mean? That's 20 people that are making good money all around the country.
Yeah.
That are paying taxes. So like this, luckily, I don't know who made that part of the plan or whatever. It was just like the good idea fairy or some shit. But luckily, enough hell was raised that, you know, they removed that shit out of there. But that's what happens, right? It's like small business owners always catch strays in these conversations. And it's why, like, certainly I believe in Hanlon's razor. You don't have to imply malice where incompetence will suffice. I think that's a big one. But a lot of these people just hate private entrepreneurship, right? They hate it. They think the government should own everything because life's not fair or whatever, and the government's going to make it that way. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, good luck with that. Move to New York, I guess, because they're about to do that.
We're about to see a very unfortunate experiment play out in New York. And the worst part about it is people who can afford to not put themselves in that position can leave. The people that will be most hurt are the ones who can't afford to escape the awful situation that's coming. We've seen a really depressing experiment unfold in San Francisco over the last 10 or 15 years that looks like things are actually improving there. And we'll see what happens in the actual election, but it certainly seems like Mamdani is going to end up winning. And it's a sad day for New York. It's a very sad day for New York.
I mean, Adams is still running as the independent, but there's a lot of smoke on him. So
I don't know if you saw him smoking the other day, smoking his hookah. That was just an unbelievable photo op.
Yeah, he's a knucklehead.
We live in a very silly time.
It's not just San Francisco, LA is also a couple of billion in debt because of their stupidity. And then, but the two major cities that elected literal socialists, Seattle and Boston. Seattle's small. There's like 400,000 people there, and they're $230 million in debt, right? Boston, a little bit bigger, but they're $2.9 billion.
Yeah. The state of
Budget
Washington
deficit.
is falling apart.
Yeah. It's like you can keep fucking around with these little experiments, but at what point, I wonder, in the brain of the 22-year-old progressive, has socialism been tried in a real way, as they call it? Like, at what point, when are you going to be satisfied that this is fucking stupid, right, is the question, I guess.
I don't know in any individual when anything will change, but was it Matthew McConaughey in True Detective? His Time's a Flat Circle, right? There's nothing new under the sun, and we're going to keep running into the same challenges and problems and opportunities that people have been facing since the dawn of humanity. I love hearing the stories about, the early writings of the earliest people that could write, talking about the same types of problems that we face today, right? Dealing with being a father, dealing with your neighbor, dealing with a dispute over property or food. And it's just a different flavor of the same type of problem that humanity's always faced.
This episode is brought to you by our title sponsor, Omaha Steaks. From handcrafted steaks to family grilling favorites, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience for all of your 4th of July grilling plans. Enjoy USDA certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, and so much more. And now, during their 4th of July sale, you get 50% off site-wide. Holy crap, that's a good deal. At omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $45 off with the promo code CITIZEN at checkout. This is a very American company, folks. They've been around since 1917, America's original butcher. Great meat of all sorts, whatever you can think of, they got it over there. And now they're giving you this crazy deal. It's 50% off site-wide plus $45 off with the promo code CITIZEN at checkout. There's nothing quite like an all-American feeling. 4th of July cookout. You know what I mean? You got to celebrate being American because we are the best country in the world. It's the perfect time to stock up and celebrate with the exceptional handcrafted flavor and convenience of Omaha Steaks. Grass-fed, grain-finished beef. More marbling for exceptional flavor, and is the choice of steakhouses and professional chefs around the world. Plus, don't forget about all new smash burgers. They're built for the grill. 6 minutes from the freezer to the grill. Perfect. I made a bunch last week, and it's just some of the best in the world. So once again, get fired up for the 4th of July with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their 4th of July sale, and add an extra $45 off with the promo code CITIZEN at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $45 off with the promo code CITIZEN at checkout. See site for details. This episode is also brought to you by First Form, firstform.com/Drinking Bros, the best protein in the business. Protein is the building block of life, folks. I say it all the time. You replace every cell in your body over the course of 2 to 10 years, depending on how active you are, how much you eat, and how clean you eat. And if you're replacing it with garbage, you're going to be garbage. So make sure you're eating the best possible protein you can and supplementing with First Form. Don't forget about the micro factors. It's just a little simple pack. Open it up, dump it in your mouth hole, and feel better. They've got the liver detox, which is a great thing for people that like to drink or people who, just want to be healthier. And then they have all these other supplements. They've got great pre-workouts. They've got great protein in all the flavors. And then, of course, for people on the go like us, they have exceptional meat sticks, protein sticks, and a variety of different flavors. And then the level 1 protein bars in a variety of flavors as well. That we talk about this stuff all the time. They're great. So go to firstform.com/Drinking Bros. It's the best company in the world. You've seen us with Andy. You've seen the company. We love these guys. It's a very American company. So go support them and support us. Firstform.com/Drinking Bros. That's OneStPHORM.com/Drinking Bros. We like to unsolve our problems a lot here.
That's a great framing.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
People today, I'm seeing a lot of very bright folks commenting as California with, the decision making and the powers that be in California destroy so much of what has made that state so special. And what's about to happen in New York. And, people are saying federalism is working here because Florida and Texas are flourishing. And I appreciate that perspective. The thing that it doesn't sit well with me is it's working for people who can escape. But there are a lot of people in New York who unfortunately just cannot escape what is coming.
The majority of people.
Majority.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in California who can't escape. And you think about some of these people whose homes were burned down. You hear about the really rich areas where homes burned down. A lot of those people, it was like a second or third generation family home. They don't have the ability to just start over. And with what has unfortunately unfolded with the governance, with things like insurance and the property, property insurance and all of that, there's these people's entire net worth may have been in their home that is uninsured, and now they will get nothing. They will not be able to move back into a home because it's clear they're not going to be allowed to rebuild in so many of these places. And so that collateral damage that continues to happen from horrific governance, that's where I can be like, yes, Texas is doing great. Florida's doing great. But these poor people that are stuck in this doom loop, that's what really doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think this I don't know how much credence I give to the Strauss-Howe generational theory. Familiar with this?
No.
The fourth turning.
No.
So it's like history in the West happens in cycles, and it's based on persona archetypes.
Okay.
So this situation happens and it produces a leader who behaves this way. Like think of FDR, for example.
Sure.
Like the market crash happens and then FDR uses government to give free shit away to people and institutionalizes that as well, right? And then, so on. Things change as different. Like you get a guy like Reagan or a guy like Trump. And not that Reagan did his job properly, in my opinion, but then you get a guy like Trump as a result of other stuff. And it just goes in these I think they say it's like an 80-year cycle, maybe. I don't remember. But
okay.
Yeah, I can buy that for sure. Like this is how, if you look at some of the biggest political philosophers and mouthpieces over the years, people like Karl Marx is responding to certain things, right? And overcorrects, which is what people do. Ayn Rand did the same thing, right? This idea, the funny thing to me about the pure anarcho-capital or libertarian position is that not many of those people would survive very long without government.
Of
right?
course.
I would say most of them wouldn't survive very long without government. And then it gets fanciful as well because they're like, well, we'll just identify somebody to take care of that. I'm like, yeah, you just described government, friend. Like, yeah, exactly. Certainly, like the goal is your goal should be to republicanize it, which is, and federalize it, like the system of federalism, Republican federalism, which is to say, the republic, there's a republic, and the federal government has limited power, and then you have more power at the base, and then you participate in that power structure. Otherwise, just shut the fuck up because you're not doing anything. You
got to participate, and we need better people to step up and in. I remember, it may have been a decade ago, Lavelle was on, I think it was Rogan, and he said, my dream system is where you design, and he may have been quoting somebody else, but he said, you design how the government functions, and then you hand over the keys to your political opposition or enemy to run it for the next 10 years.
Right.
And I understand the enthusiasm that a lot of people have that, Trump's doing a lot of things that they're really excited about. And in some cases, using a lot of executive authority to do so. But to that point, there are cycles. Look who's just gotten or who will be elected in New York. My caution to some of my most vocal friends on their enthusiasm is it's not improbable that somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could end up becoming the nominee in 4 or 3 or 3.5, 4 or 8 years. And just like temper your enthusiasm about how things are going for you right now, because they're not going to go that way forever. And so the more we need government, there's no question the society doesn't function without it. But the less they are able to dictate what happens in your life every day,
Yeah.
My philosophy has always been everybody's going to be better off over the long term there.
Yeah. There's no, I mean, politics is Hollywood for ugly people, is what they say, right? And it's like mostly like think of not the smartest kid in your class, but the one that worked the hardest and was class president. That's who goes into politics. And look, no sweat on class presidents, I guess. I was one in college and the National Honor Society president, which is really funny, to be honest.
That's awesome.
It's funny to me because the speeches I gave were insane. But
did you promise free ice cream for everybody and
no,
no homework?
I would never do that. No, I would tell them to get the fuck up and work for their ice cream. But yeah, there's that's the archetype of the type of person that gets involved in politics. Usually a person who certainly, and you know this because you worked in it and I did too. I worked in politics for one cycle and I'm like, these people are fucking garbage. All of them are garbage. But yeah, it's like a lot of them are motivated by a desire to help other people, right? But it's a very toxic thing. It's like, what do you call it? It's like an overbearing mother. That's how they behave. Mostly, right? It's very effeminate. It's very like weak, but trying to exert power over other people, and passive aggressive and all this stuff. It's like, why would you want more of that? You know what I mean?
I think it's just intoxicating for most of the people that end up there.
No, I know why the people in politics want to be there.
Yeah.
Money and power, just like anything else. But the idea of the plebs, us plebs, cheerleading one government or another, it's like, no, man, like government is your enemy. And it's not, I don't mean to say that you should be literally fighting government all the time, but the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And I don't think Thomas Jefferson was calling for a perpetual state of war. I think he was saying that the balance between liberty and government is that liberty has to pay the fuck attention, right? And be skeptical. Like, hey, you said this, but this happened.
Skeptical is the right way to frame that, yeah.
It's like, you said this, but this happened. So were you wrong or did you lie? And if you're wrong, you're incompetent. If you lied, you're improper for office. So we got to do something here, right? And we don't do that.
The fact that we still don't have term limits for senators and congressmen tell us everything that we need to know about how the people that go in to serve really feel about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you are straight ticket Republican, straight ticket Democrat. We should not want people to spend their lives there. It was never the intent. And it's so demonstrably bad for our country. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you sit on. Doesn't matter if you're in the middle or left or right. The fact that people go and spend their lives there is the opposite of how we should feel about those that are serving the country. And it used to be about service, and now it's clearly about enrichment, and that's, as we could probably wax lyrical all day long. That's the Republicans, it's the Democrats, it's the independents. It's all the people that use their position to then go become a lobbyist, to go get hired in industry to lobby, on and on and on. And none of that, as you said a little while ago, is in contrast or in opposition to the idea that we actually need government to help keep society functioning. But that tension and that skepticism, that's what I try and make sure to champion in any of these conversations that I have.
Yeah, I mean, you would think our system of government was built so that, like, the founding fathers it was a pretty wide array of archetypes, right? Like Washington was a military commander, Jefferson was more of like a farmer philosopher, Adams was a lawyer, so on and so forth. All these guys kind of had their own little niche. A lot of farmers, a lot of less lawyers than now, for sure. Some philosophers, a lot of military people, and then just some random dicks. You know what I mean? It's like, that's kind of what it was made to be, and now it's mostly lawyers.
It's mostly lawyers, and frequently people who've never had a real serious set of responsibilities,
like
in their
a real
lives.
job.
And I think when I think about the people that are making laws that decide our lives on a daily basis, so much of the conversation is pointed at Congress, and I always love hearing their approval ratings at 8%. I want to know who those 8 out of 100 people are that think they're doing a good job. Again, regardless of your party, they are not doing a good job. But what I have continued to learn, I've got 2 young kids now, is yes, it matters who's in Washington. But what matters a lot more is who your local state representatives are, who's on your school board. And those jobs they tend to be less of the people that are going to try to just like ingratiate themselves and have a job for life, like a lot of the congressmen and senators are, because it doesn't pay enough and there isn't enough influence that you can gather in those roles to really enrich yourself. There are certainly some exceptions. But these local and state roles, especially school boards, this is where I think a lot of our society is starting to slip, because it matters so much what is happening around the corner and in your schools. And it's just so easy for things it's not even the slippery slope. It's just this like mudslide into terrible decision making that has such severe consequences, especially for kids.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, if you talk about bootstrapped startups and government, a lot of parallels there, right? Like it was kind of a funny thing during the last election cycle, but I think the phrase that I used was, I want a government so small and ineffective that they can't capture and execute a pet squirrel, right? Like I don't want government to have the time, power, or money to do that. That's a ridiculous thing to do, right?
Or even the inkling that they should.
Yeah. It's like a.
Yeah. But what was that squirrel's name?
Fucking Peanut. Yeah.
Peanut squirrel.
Yeah, it's like that. That's what I want. And look, there's parallels there, and the primary parallel is decentralization. It works pretty much always, right? Especially now in the information age. Like in the middle 20th century, maybe we needed the FDA to look into certain things, right? But now with the courts that we have and the access to information we have, I don't think we really need much of an FDA presence anymore. If somebody's out there pumping poison into something, we're all going to find out pretty quick, and that company is going to go bankrupt, right?
And the problem is the way that the system has evolved is companies are getting FDA approval to pump their poison.
Yeah.
And this is Walter Williams.
It means nothing.
Absolutely.
Right?
And Walter Williams and Thomas Sowell, I think, have always done a good job clarifying this position, which is when something is approved by the FDA, there is this sense of trust that is imbued. But when we look at what has happened with the pharmacological just mass poisoning and deaths that have come through with the full blessing of the FDA, that we are supposed to trust them, that's where the trust erosion started. And look, there are a lot of things I want to make sure that are done well and safely. And most of that job, not only have they started to fail on, but they've so eroded the trust that it's the downstream effects are so severe.
Yeah.
And I'm sure plenty of your guests have talked about what unfolded during the initial phases of COVID and the COVID vaccine. When you look at the increase in vaccine skepticism and hesitancy, there are lots of opinions about which ones you should take, and I'm not going to wade into that. But the single worst thing that the FDA did and the government did for vaccine adoption was the way that they pushed the COVID vaccine.
Right.
Because now everything else is called into question in a fundamentally different way. And so, I've got some friends in the medical community that are absolutely aghast and shocked at the increase in vaccine skepticism. And when you point to what unfolded during the mandates and people losing their jobs and what was enforced on kids, that those sets of decisions from people that are supposed to be the moral authority and the legal authority that just threw a lot of that out the window in, frankly, the name of orthodoxy, that has done more damage to vaccine adoption than I think anything in the last 100 years.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is. I wonder how much of it is the, and this is heady probably, but how much of it is the like the Marxist infiltration of our culture, because Western culture has this long history of trying to reach towards liberty, right? For a very long time. I mean, there's been revolts all over the place. There's the Magna Carta, the English Bill of Rights that was a result of the Agreement of the People by the Levellers, which was a result of the Serf rebellions. During that time, all the Enlightenment guys, Locke and Montesquieu, and our early colonial charters, and leading into our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, all this stuff. There's been like this 1,000-year history, basically, of Westerners deciding, well, we have agency.
Yeah.
We have agency, and it's not okay that you're telling us what to think and say, right?
Because power is consistently abused,
Yeah.
and the demonstration of that has happened in every culture,
Yeah.
everywhere throughout all of time.
But in the Eastern cultures, not so much, right? Like they just don't, there isn't that long, or that, there isn't that protracted struggle for individual liberty. And Marxism is a uniquely Eastern thing, right? It's not something that would have come out of the West. It could only have come out of
Yes.
an abusive authoritarian government, and a guy saying, well, it's not fair, so we need to make things fair.
Yes.
Which is a ridiculous premise, obviously, right?
Only I can make it fair.
Yeah.
Just trust me.
Yeah.
Don't trust anybody
that's
else.
pretty much how it goes. So I wonder, how much of our capitulation to governmental authority during the 20th century especially was a result of that Marxist infiltration of our culture. Because to your point from a second ago, this isn't true of the entire West, but the French and the Americans specifically have a very fuck you attitude when you're trying to tell them what to do. You know what I mean? Not so much that, sometimes the English as well, but the French,
But much more the French and the Americans than the British.
The French and the Americans specifically
Yes.
in the West are like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you could tell that it's the French and the Americans because of the difference between Quebec and the rest of Canada, right? Quebec is like, fuck you, we want to leave. The rest of Canada is like, give me the shot.
Can
You know
I
what mean?
fall in line? Right.
Yeah. So there's something unique about that for us, and I do wonder what made it erode. It could have just been comfort. That's certainly part of it, but I also think it was the infiltration.
When we certainly it has a role. I think when you look at so much of Western history, there is this tension of the desire for autonomy and the desire for, it's just easier when someone tells me what to do. It's easier to not have to think about the consequences and the stress and the anxiety and the pressure and all of that. I agree that there's been this arc towards autonomy and freedom, but also the natural state of humanity is control. It is domination. It is power. And so we are a very unique country. We're a very unique culture in not just present day, but all of human history. This is a very, I would say, tenuous hold on freedom. And I don't think it would have happened if we didn't have the geography that we have.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The independence that we have because of the oceans and because of the geography, the topography, the soil, all of that, the climate. It doesn't happen if we've got neighbors that are conquering us all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's who was it? Pershing said that soldiers win battles, logistics win wars, and if your logistics have to travel 3,000 miles across the ocean, good luck, man.
I mean, some of the biggest military losses were simply because of logistics.
Yeah.
You can speak far better this than I can, but at the end of the day, your supply chains are make or break your ability to win, and it is our unique geography and history of kind of what led to the starting of the country that I think have allowed this experiment to flourish in the way that it has. And we can talk about the tension and the stress and all of that all day long, and I love doing it. I'll also say I am more optimistic about the future of the country than ever, despite all of the challenges and some of the crazy things happening, because I continue to see the optimism and the entrepreneurs and the citizens and the people continue on the whole to show progress is still not only possible, it's not inevitable, but it feels like the momentum is moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And it is so easy to get lost in the awful news day to day. But if you follow the right people on Twitter or X, and you tune out a lot of the other nonsense, and you point yourself towards the positive, and you stay engaged in your community, and you're engaged in your school, and you're engaged with your kids. I'm more optimistic about the future of the country than ever.
Yeah.
But it's going to take good, hard work. And I think most importantly, for people that feel like I don't want to get involved in this political BS, you don't have to, but you need to speak up about rational truth and your kids and what it takes to make your community and your family function. You don't just have to fall in line with the orthodoxy for fear of losing your job, for fear of, getting called out or canceled or any of those things. Just be true and keep moving forward, and things will find a way to work out.
Yeah, I think, along with that fuck you attitude we have, part of it is a bend towards contrarianism as well, which is sometimes good. I mean, you're talking about heterodoxy now.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's funny how it works because of these cycles that we go through. Heterodoxy almost always leads back to orthodoxy. The best example is Martin Luther, right? Martin Luther was like, hey, you like this giant apparatus we call the church, you're teaching a bunch of stuff that's not in this book that we call the Word of God, right? Now, I'm not religious myself, but I went to seminary because I'm very interested in the way people think, right?
Yeah.
And that might be the best example in human history of heterodoxy bringing us back to real orthodoxy, right? Which is kind of the point. Like we need to have an epistemology, like a shared set of beliefs and facts that everybody agrees. Like we can disagree on stuff, but this stuff's definitely true, right? Like don't fuck with kids should be one. You'd think
it should be.
Yeah, but
right?
that's the thing though. So heterodoxy plays a role in bringing things back to the orthodoxy. The problem that I'm seeing on the American right now is that they've branded themselves as heterodox or contrarian. Like, no, that's a pathway back to orthodoxy. That's what it's supposed to be. So don't call yourself a constitutionalist unless you're trying to get back there, right? And then, the only way to really be able to do that is to understand it. You have to understand. Man, it's very frustrating. I get into arguments about this all the time, but and I've said this many times on this show. People will talk about freedom of speech and they don't know what it means, right?
Absolutely.
They don't know what it actually means. You can track this throughout, probably from before the Magna Carta, but definitely that's a good point. So the ultimate right is property rights, and the ultimate property is oneself, and the ultimate iteration of the self is thought, and speech is thought. That's why it's evil, right? Because if you're trying to stop people from saying stuff, you're trying to shape the way they think against their will. And that is the ultimate crime against a human being, even worse than taking their life, right? Because you've taken their agency away. And the Magna Carta was a good start, but it only applied to the barons, of which there were, 22, I think, something like that. So, it took 400 years, 430 or so years to get from that to an agreement of the people, which is basically the foundation of our Constitution, from this organization called the Levelers. And then it took another 120 or 30 years after that to get to the U.S. Constitution, and another 10 years after that to get our Bill of Rights. So it's like, this has been a long process, but if you don't understand all of these fucking guidestones along the way and why it happened, right, then you have no idea what you're talking about. You just want to be able to say what you want to say.
And this is the danger of the postmodernists, where they erode all truth. There is no truth.
Well, that's
all
the point,
relative.
though. It's like
Absolutely. That's how they get control.
James Lindsay always says this. There's two phrases. One is that the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. And the other one is call everything X until you control it. Call everything racist until you control it. Call everything stolen until you control it, so on, right?
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. It's a very good way to think about progressivism and postmodernism, right?
Gosh, how many years? I think I read Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life I think he came out a decade ago or so. But it sounds so silly to say this out loud, but one of the things that he said that stuck with me more than anything else is don't lie. Because the second you start to lie, you break your compact with yourself, with your God, with your society, with your children. And the small lies become the bigger lies. And then you get to a point where society has no idea what truth is.
Right.
Which is how good, moral, good-natured people helped perpetrate the Holocaust. It wasn't all evil sociopaths who made the Holocaust happen. It was good, normal people who ratted on their neighbors.
Right.
Because they had lost all sense of what truth was. And so it's one of the things that is a absolutely non-negotiable as my wife and I raise our children is don't lie. No matter what, don't ever lie. And there are going to be times that you make mistakes and there might be a consequence, but just always tell the truth. And that is the thing that scares me a good deal about what has happened across the political spectrum over the course of the last 20 years is the truth is not the truth anymore. The truth is relative. It's flexible, it's bendable. And when you lose that, you lose all mooring for society and life. And so while I am more optimistic than ever, and I do think that there are blips and there are challenges that we can overcome, my encouragement when I talk to people about this is just tell the truth and don't keep yourself silent in the face of bold, outright lies.
Yeah.
Because that is where small things can become unimaginable horrors and evils.
Yeah, it's even so. Certainly, individually, tell the truth, and then also don't allow for lies to be spoken in your presence. Like you've got to have some moral courage in that regard. John Adams was visiting, the English court for the first time as the U.S. ambassador to England, right?
Okay.
Technically before Washington was even elected, so we didn't even really have a government yet. We had just won the war. And Edward had this and that to say, and John Adams said, Your Highness, I have no loyalty to any country but my own, right? And Edward, like everybody in the room, like tightened up, but Edward said, an honest man will never have any other, right? Which is one of my favorite quotes in all of human history.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, so tell the truth, but don't abide lies and others either, because both of these things break your brain. It makes you pathologically, cognitively dissonant.
Absolutely.
Like you can't exist as a truthful, moral creature with lies in yourself or around you without it breaking you at some point.
Absolutely.
Where you lose your ability to tell what's real and what's not.
We have watched a lot of people break in this country over
just
the
like
last
believing crazy stuff. So it takes me back to like a Carl Sagan quote from the 90s. For me, it's far better to observe the universe as it is rather than persistent delusion, regardless of how satisfying the delusion is.
Might be, right.
Right? It's like, okay, yeah, maybe that delusion is making you feel better, but it's not actually, right?
It's actually doing much greater harm.
Yeah. It's fucking your brain up. Now,
I mean, I'll draw a parallel back to the pharmacological, horrors of what has persisted in the U.S. over the last 20, 30 years with the widespread adoption of SSRIs as this, hey, we're just going to make things better. And it is perpetuating a delusion. There are some people who genuinely need the product. Most do not.
Right.
And it has really broken people. And when you watch people finally get themselves off of SSRIs, first, it's a brutal process if you've been on it for years. And then the second is they go, I so deeply regret ever having gone down this road. And it is a delusion.
Yeah,
and I don't malign anyone who chooses to go on them, especially because, again, the doctors, the people you're supposed to trust, are the ones dispensing this garbage.
Yeah.
And it is destroying lives. It's destroying communities. It's destroying families.
Yeah.
I love that. Just tell the truth and don't stand up for lies told in your presence. And that's the same type of problem.
Yeah, and it's, to me, at least from the psychiatry side of the aisle, this is all outlined in the differences between Freudian and Adlerian psychology. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that.
Freudian, yes, but not the other.
So Freudian is like, there's a problem, it's an external problem,
Yep.
and we're going to fix it over time. Adler is, there's a problem and you're responsible for fixing it,
Okay.
right? That's the easiest way that I can explain that.
Okay.
So Freud would recommend drugs, probably cocaine for him, to be honest, which I'm not against in principle. I just don't know if therapeutically it's the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Because the half-life is super short. So you're not, it's just like ketamine, by the way. Everybody's obsessed with ketamine right now. But the
very hot.
half-life is
Very hot
super
right now.
short,
Yeah.
right? It's 8 hours, which means after 16 hours, you lose the effect.
Yeah.
Anyways, mushrooms are way better. Anyways,
Perfect.
their half-life is like 15 days, right? So you get a real chance to internalize things. At any rate, Adler or Freud would say there's something broken with you. It's probably your parents, probably your mom, and you have to do psychotherapy and maybe take drugs to fix it, and permanently maybe, right? And Adler would say your work as an individual is to solve this problem, right? And he brings everything back to personal responsibility. Like, hey, that person said something that upset me.
Yes.
It's like, okay, well, and it's kind of where this principle that did you have a bad day or did you have a bad 5 minutes and you let it ruin the rest of your day?
Oh, yeah.
Like, your job is to get over that,
Absolutely.
right? And if it requires you breaking contact with that person, then that's what you got to do, right?
Potentially, yeah.
But you can't, like, in the same way that you can't blame everybody else for your problems, you can't wait for them to be the solution for it either, right?
Yeah.
So it goes both ways, and it's a very individualistic.
Which is much more Western philosophy as well.
Very individualistic, but also the purpose of it is to be present and competent for the group.
Yeah.
Right? Not to be a collectivist.
Correct.
Which is what Freudian psychology is.
Yeah.
Which is why you've got to stay on pills for the rest of your life, right? It's fucked up.
And what is just so shocking, again, with the medical community's support of these drugs is the results are so obviously bad for a meaningful period of time. This is not like a blip.
Yeah, like the suicide rates and stuff, which they would say you're sampling on the dependent variable because it's only people with psychological distress on them in the first place. But there's control groups now of people using other types of therapy, other types of drugs, especially psychedelic drugs that have like
Profound changes.
like 5% of the suicide rates that SSRI people have.
And again, it's this, you're on it for life, right? This is not and you will get better. You're on it for life. You need to increase the dosage. And when it stops working, we need to switch you to a new drug. That's not good. And the FDA, the pharmaceutical industry is never going to have a different perspective, although there are some changes underway at the NIH and the FDA. My hope is if we can change the narrative, that there are some very big changes that can come.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of, I guess, the health industry or medical industry, you've got a new product.
Yeah.
That's
working on changing some narratives there too.
Yeah, this is how the best products always come about. There's one that exists or some gap or something, and somebody with some level of ingenuity is like, well, I'm just going to fix that problem. That's what a business really is, to be honest. So tell me about how you got started with this.
My son was born, I was building Mizzen+Main. My son was born. I did a lot of research. The leading baby monitor on the market at the time from kind of a press and awareness perspective is a company called Nanit. It's a Wi-Fi camera that runs an app on your phone. I woke up one morning, my son was a couple months old, and you're just supposed to leave your phone plugged in next to you at night, which there's a whole host of reasons why that's not a good idea. And the app...
Yeah, one of them, by the way, not to cut you off, but one of them is, this thing used to have one antenna in it. Now it's got 4. It's got an independent GPS antenna. It's got a Wi-Fi antenna. It's got your cellular antenna, and it's got a Bluetooth antenna. All different ranges, too. And it's just right next to you, blasting your ass all the time.
It's a lot.
So it's not great.
And so, and there's also
maybe we'll evolve, by the way. Who knows?
In one direction or another.
Yeah.
There's also the psychological reality of having your phone next to you at night. You're more likely to use it. You're going to stay up. It's going to interrupt your sleep. All that to say, I had acquiesced and fine, I'm going to do it. But I woke up one morning and the app had crashed. And it's my baby monitor. And I learned that an app on a phone is not a baby monitor. It's an app that is convenient for you to check. And when you're outside of the home, you can check in on a babysitter or nanny. That's great. But it's not a baby monitor because it can't alert you if it loses connection.
Right.
And iPhone or Android will never allow an app to override their settings.
Right.
And even if the app was as foolproof as humanly possible, if you forget to plug your phone in at night because you're sleep deprived, an app can't alert you that your phone's about to die.
Right.
So I've now talked to tons of parents who, they woke up in the morning and they're like, man, that was a quiet night. Kid didn't make any noise. And then they look and they forgot to plug their phone in and it's dead next to them. That's not a good feeling, right? Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. We don't need to infantilize in an unhealthy way that, kids are fragile. But at the end of the day, technology can make our lives better. And this baby monitor situation was not. So we went out and bought an old school baby monitor, like little 5-inch or 3-inch LCD screen, kind of a piece of junk, commoditized junk from China that across our 2 kids, I think they broke 6 times. We had to replace them all the time.
Was it the kids breaking them?
No, they just break. They're just not good quality products because they're trying to make them as cheap as humanly possible. And so we used the old school device at night so it would alert us if we lost connection, but we kept a Wi-Fi camera because we wanted to be able to look in on our kid with a babysitter. 8.5 years later, still no one has merged those 2 kind of use modalities into one. So at Harbor, we created a camera and a 10-inch monitor that connect directly to each other with or without internet. So
is it Bluetooth?
The camera creates its own Wi-Fi signal.
Oh, it's an ad hoc network?
Yes.
Okay.
It creates its own Wi-Fi network to connect to the monitor directly when necessary. Or if you're at home leveraging your home Wi-Fi, it's not necessary. It'll use your home Wi-Fi, which tends to be more powerful and reliable.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I would assume, just from a technical standpoint, some kind of master-slave relationship between the 2 networks.
Yes.
Like it defaults to one and then backups to the other.
Yes,
Okay,
and that's the important thing is if your Wi-Fi or ISP goes down, it will fail over to that direct local communication. And importantly, also, if you're traveling, you can use it in a hotel room where you can't tap your baby monitor into the hotel networks. They won't allow you to do so. So like message boards and Reddit abounds with stories of parents that are on, they get to the hotel room, it's 10 o'clock at night, they go to connect their Nanit or their Owlet or whatever Wi-Fi camera to the hotel to watch their kid in the adjoining hotel room. And then they realize, oh shit, we can't. And so they got to run to Walmart to go buy one of these old school crappy devices. And so many parents end up building these 2 kind of systems in parallel. We solved the 2 of those together. And then importantly, we're using that to build a remote patient monitoring capability. Most people can't afford an in-home night nurse. It's $300 to $700 a night, depending on where you live. That's if you can afford one, and if you can find one, and if you're comfortable having a stranger take care of your kid in the middle of the night, which most people are not. They don't meet one of those buckets. You can turn the controls of your camera and monitor over to my professionally trained night nurse staff who can remotely turn the volume on your monitor up or down for you and only wake you up when a professionally trained night nurse says it's time for you to go in. So we are democratizing access to sleep expertise, and it's really cool because now we're getting people that want us to watch their grandparents. We've got people that want us to help look after their disabled children, where we can bring access and expertise and all-night care to the masses in a way that's never been possible before. So I started working on this project about 2.5 years ago. We started shipping cameras in Q4 of last year. We shipped to thousands of families just in the last couple months. It's been fun to build again. It's certainly difficult. 2025 has been an absolute roller coaster with tariff mania, with consumer demand, with interest rates, all of this, with everything that's unfolding. It's a tough time to build a new consumer brand, as I know that you can attest to. Attention is more fragmented than ever. I'm waiting every day for TikTok to finally be banned and we can just focus our efforts elsewhere. But ultimately, so far it's been going well. Parents are telling us we're changing their lives, and it's been fun to do it again.
I got a couple of questions. One, Nanit goes for like maybe $100 to $150 cheaper than yours, which is not a huge gap.
It's not insignificant,
to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not insignificant, but their Pro Pack, the one that comes with the extra device, is the same as yours. Actually, there's a little bit more expensive, I think, so once you get everything with it.
We have a 10-inch monitor that comes with it. You can watch up to 4 different kids on one screen. But importantly, we don't charge a subscription to use our product. Nanit, to use most of their features, is $120 or $300 per year per camera. So if you're watching multiple kids for multiple years, you're talking thousands of dollars to use the device that you've already paid for. And we think people are tired of subscriptions. I don't want to buy something and then pay you for the right to keep using it.
Yeah.
But that's the way that, unfortunately, a lot of companies, they think, well, I just need to try to extract more from my customer rather than I need to create more value for my customer. It's the
SaaS model,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like Photoshop used to cost, or the Adobe suite used to cost $500 to $800, depending on which elements you bought. Now it's like $50 a month forever. Right? You know what
You're
I mean?
never allowed to own it.
Yeah. I've got some questions.
Yeah.
So it's got onboard storage on the device or on the screen as well.
On the camera.
Okay. How much?
And we had a couple. It's an enormous amount. I actually don't remember off the top of my head. It's enough to store 30 days worth of moments and 2 full days worth of history. And a moment is when it recognizes that something's happened. So if no one's in the room for 12 hours, it's not going to store a moment. But we made a couple really conscious design decisions. One was put the memory storage on the device. So A, we don't have to charge you to store your footage in our cloud.
Right.
B, it's much more secure. We don't store your data. So if you don't want us to see your data, we can't. And then C, I almost said 3, A, B, C. From a cybersecurity and an ongoing management perspective, parents are just in much more control. And I think importantly on that, like parents have enough places where they're storing pictures and videos and data. And it's like, they don't need another cloud storage service. If something really cute happens, the kid rolls over in the crib for the first time, they say mama for the first time, you can just save that down to your Google Photos, to your Apple Photos, whatever you want, rather than one more place to keep track of everything. The other thing we did was we put an AI chip on the device itself as well. So again, we don't store or process our users' footage, whereas all these other Wi-Fi cameras, they send it to their cloud and then back down to you. We don't store or process our users' footage. We have some really cool AI capabilities that we are rolling out this year. All of that will be done at the edge locally, not through our servers. So if you are in your home, your footage doesn't leave your home no matter what. If you are outside your home and you want to check in on a babysitter, you can pull up our app with end-to-end encryption and check in on your babysitter.
Yeah. And by the way, end-to-end encryption is the most secure thing out right now. People don't want to talk about this, but Signal is barely more secure than just iMessage.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes.
Like whatever you think about these encrypted apps, iMessage is secured, is what do you call it? Encrypted end to end.
Yes.
Right. Just like Signal is.
iMessage is just fine. It just doesn't auto delete.
Yeah, that's the only part. Yeah.
Signal auto deletes. There you go.
Yep. So speaking of security, I guess.
Have you been added to any Signal group chats of war plans lately?
No. Okay. No, but I am on a couple of statecraft Signal chats, but they're open source intelligence.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I can see some security application here as well, right? I assume that's down the road for you guys once you get everything figured out.
Yeah, we have a couple extensions that we're excited
the other
about.
companies that do this, it's all cloud storage, which is not great. They don't have any good mobile. I mean, the first thing I thought about is my lady and I travel a lot. Sometimes she goes alone. Sometimes she has the kids with her when she's doing it. And there's no good portable security camera that exists. Yep. So with your system, I could set the camera and the monitor up, connect the monitor to the internet, even in the hotel room, and like keep an eye on things while I'm gone.
It depends on what the hotel will allow, because some of them won't allow you to tap a device into their network. Some do, some don't. But the ability to use this with end-to-end encryption puts us in rare air relative to a lot of the other products. And then again, importantly, we're not storing or processing your footage. And so,
and by the way, you could just buy your own Wi-Fi hotspot.
Yes, absolutely.
They're pretty cheap, to be honest.
And from a convenience perspective, it's a great way to handle that. But what we see is down the line, the ability to help with all sorts of remote patient monitoring. So again, looking after, we've got some customers now that want us to look after their aging in place grandparents or their parents, just to say, hey, at night we want to know if they fall. They're there are lots of devices that can help elderly if they fall, but at the end of the day, they have to be wearing them.
Yeah.
They have to know how to use them and set them up.
Or be conscious enough to use them.
Yeah. Right.
Well, this is all very smart. The
Thanks.
way that you're changing this, I like it.
We're off to the races. You know, the most fun part of this that I had so far is when Nanit threatened to sue us. We had an ad showing one of their failure notifications and me throwing a Nanit in the trash. And they sent a lawsuit to, humorously, our CMO, not me, which was just ridiculous. They said that we were violating trademark laws, which we were not.
Nope.
They
could try a lawsuit for defamation, but if you're able to on the spot recreate the problem, then they lose.
Yes. It's a reality of the product. But then humorously, they said we were confusing customers that Nanit and Harbor are related.
Why would you want to do that by showing how that product sucks?
And also that we had caused them irreparable harm and damage because we were showing that their product, deserved to be thrown in the trash. Like, you need to pick one of those arguments. You can't pick both of those arguments. So I went to one of my friends who's he loves this kind of stuff, and he wrote a very aggressive and appropriate response. We were 100% within our bounds, legal bounds. We'd done nothing wrong. And it was the greatest SEO gift imaginable because I published their letter and our response on my personal blog. And now when you search Harbor and Nanit, it's one of the first things that shows up.
That's really funny.
And
when you search Baby Monitor, Harbor is the first one that shows up, and Nanit's the second.
We're doing good hard work on the SEO side.
Yeah.
I'm proud of what our team has done. And ultimately, with something like this, it's just about getting enough days in market to where enough people know about it. When I look at the products that are the number 1 through 5 top sellers, it's just simply because they've been around. Yeah. And they're getting the attention.
Matters.
What's that?
Name recognition matters in politics as well.
It's why we keep getting really awful politicians.
Yeah. Speaking of that, you can very often tell how serious a lawsuit is based on if they spell the names correctly and if they go to the right email addresses, because a good law firm will be able to find those things.
It's not
hard. I got, speaking of politicians, I got a cease and desist from a certain one-eyed politician who's a total shitbag, and everything was wrong. I laughed in his face. I'm like, you're fucking stupid, man. Come on.
Your lawyers have to get things right.
Yeah. The suit was written by like it was an upset teenage girl. I'm like, oh, you wrote this yourself. You were drunk and wrote this yourself.
What amazes me with these lawyers is, and we can talk all day about AI taking everyone's jobs, and lawyers will be replaced by AI as well. Really low tier lawyers will be replaced by AI because AI will probably do a better job than them. Yeah. But really great lawyers will never be replaced.
Well, litigators will never be replaced. No. There's no way to replace that. Although it would be really funny to see
2 AIs
fucking
arguing
robots
with each other. Yeah.
Just going back and forth.
Yes.
That
reminds me that video when people put 2 people on speakerphone and it was 2 Chinese restaurants arguing with each other about what their orders were. Two AI chatbots arguing with each other.
That's a really good one. Yeah, I enjoy that. All right, well, we got to go do the other show. Before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can find your products, because they're both really
our mission at Harbor is to create happier parents and healthier families. And so we have a ton of free resources at harbor.co. You don't have to be a customer. We've got infant sleep guides, toddler sleep guides, and a ton of interviews with doctors and OB-GYNs and peds, lactation specialists, all to try to help parents with the questions that they have. All of it's for free on our website,
SEO.
harbor.co. And then Harbor Sleep on all the socials. I'm Kevin S. Lavelle on Instagram and X. And then I'm on LinkedIn. Try to share the journey. Try and share like things that I've learned being an entrepreneur along the way. If I can help people not make the same mistakes that I did, then that's a good thing.
Good. Well, thanks for coming today.
Yeah,
I
good chat.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we're gonna do probably quite a bit weirder one on Drinker Bros now.
I'm fired up.
That'll be fun.
The best set I've seen yet. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So thank you for coming today. I appreciate it.
Great.
Man.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.